So for this watercolor skill builder video, I'm going to show you how to use a couple simple techniques to create a really popular style painting with a lot of middle school students. So we're going to create a silhouette painting. And what a silhouette painting is going to do is you're going to practice using a graded wash to make a sky, so which will kind of represent like a sunset or sunrise, and then you will choose a subject and paint the silhouette of it in the foreground. So before you begin, you need to make sure that you have all your materials assembled. You're going to want to make sure you have a small 4x6 watercolor paper. Tape it using some masking tape. So you've got about 1/4 inch. So tape that down flat. You want to make sure that you have your watercolor paints. You're probably going to want a towel or a paper towel. You're going to want a paintbrush, and you're also going to want a cup with some water in it. So to begin this painting, the first thing that we're going to do is create a graded wash. So with all washes, first thing you're going to do is wet your paper so you have a damp surface to work on. So for this type of wash, I prefer to use a big brush. So even though we're working on a small paper, we want to cover this whole entire surface. So a brush size 10 or 8 is going to be recommended for that. So once you've dampened your paper, think about what colors you want to use. So I'm going to do kind of like a sunset. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do yellow near the top or bottom. So I'm just going to load my brush with yellow pigment, and I'm going to do a stripe of yellow and try to make that as bright as possible all the way across the top, and bring that down about 1/3 of the way. All right, then I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm going to do red at the bottom. So I'm going to load it with pigment and do a stripe of red at the bottom. And that's really going to kind of fade up. So again, just kind of swish that across. So that fills about the bottom third. And then I'm going to do orange in the middle. Now, if I had just mixed my red and yellow together, they would eventually create, an orange in the middle. But I'm going to go ahead and use some of my orange paint as well and kind of start to blend those together. So once you've got your stripes of color, now this last step is all about just kind of mixing all of these. So I like to kind of clean my brush out and then kind of get all the excess water out of the brush with your towel or paper towel. And now, because I want the colors to blend kind of smoothly from top to bottom, I'm just going to kind of go back and forth and pull like color from the bottom up. Now I really don't want to overpower that yellow, so I'm not going to go over it too much. And then after I clean my brush, I'm kind of clean this up a little bit. So kind of dab all the water out in your towel over here to the side. And then you can use your brush to kind of suck up that extra moisture. All right, so this would work. We could be done with this, but I want my colors to be a little bit more bright and vibrant. So I'm going to try to use a lot less water this time and really try to do a little bit more pigment on my brush and then come back on top and get a little bit brighter yellow and pull that down. And then I'm going to do the same with the orange and the red. Now, once I have this graded wash done, you're not going to be able to move on to the last step, which is the silhouette part, until this paint has dried. So we should have a couple hair dryers set up in the classroom. I'm going to recommend that whenever you get this done and you are satisfied with how nicely that all blends, blend that up just a little bit more. We're going to stop and pause, and I'm going to go take this over and dry that. And once this is fairly dry, I'm going to come back and explain how you do the last step. Okay, so I just stepped away and I dried my painting, and then I also flipped it because if my sun is going down, and this is indeed a sunset, it's more likely to be more yellow at the bottom and maybe more red at the top. Okay, the other thing that I did is I went and got a smaller paintbrush. So this is a number 4 because we're dealing on a small sheet of paper, and I'm to the step in the project where I want to start painting some details. I'm going to want a much smaller brush. So that's up to you. That just kind of depends on what you want to paint. Now, at this point in the project, now that you've got a sky done, your next step is to decide what you want to paint. Okay, so make sure you have a subject in mind. I recommend that you use a reference photo. So find a picture online, perhaps, or you can bring in your own photo, find a picture in a magazine if you want to do. So because we want this to be a silhouette, we mainly just want to do not a lot of details with this. It's just going to be the general shape, and it's all going to be one color. So for your one color, just pick a dark color. The most popular choice for students is probably black. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to use black. So I'm going to load this up, and I have pulled up a picture of like a windmill. It's like a little farm scene, country scene. So I'm just going to look at that. And the reason that we want all this to be dry is because now at this point in the assignment, this is where we do details. Okay, and we all know that from experience on other projects that if this background is not dry, I'm not going to be able to paint such crisp, clear lines and details. Okay, so I'm really kind of experimenting with, how hard to press to get like thick lines and thin lines. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint like the stand of this down somewhere up here. I'll have like a little thicker line, maybe somewhere back here as well. Okay, and then I'm going to just do these little parts. Now, if you don't feel super confident in your painting abilities at this point, and you don't necessarily feel like you can just kind of freehand all of this, you could go in and like sketch that out with a pencil first, because this is just kind of a little practice assignment. I felt confident enough that I could just go ahead and kind of freehand and paint these details, but definitely don't feel like you can't use a pencil and kind of sketch things out and erase first and then kind of go from there. Also, you can paint whatever you want. One thing you probably noticed is this does kind of go a long way. I haven't even gotten more paint yet in this. So that'll kind of work out like that. Okay, so once we, might be a little bit bigger than I wanted, but it'll work. Okay, so once we kind of get all this, I recommend you do like your main subject first, and then don't forget about kind of the ground. So I do like the subject first, and then you can kind of paint in details like the ground and how you want that. Okay, so some other things that you can do, you could like stipple in some like textures if you want to maybe make it look like you've got like trees or something like that. You could get like a sponge and kind of do some things that way. Don't be afraid to add layers of color as well. So if you wanted to kind of do a layer of black and then let that dry, and then maybe do like some others right on top just to make that look a little bit darker, that will work as well. Okay, so this is kind of how you do your silhouette painting. You just do like a sky in the background, and then pick a subject and paint it in a really dark color, such as a black in the foreground, your space out to the front, and go from there. Okay. So that is it. That's my little mini practice painting for this particular watercolor skill builder.